Hello, my name is Alistair. Scene name is Leather Heraeth. I am currently serving as European Bootblack 2020. I won the title in Darklands, which is in Antwerp, in March. And we've been in coronavirus lockdown ever since. So, yeah, it's a little bit difficult getting out and about to promote bootblacking in the UK currently. So who am I? I am a dominant. I'm also a member of the UK Crawl Leather family, um, and I'm the family bootblack. Um, Bootblacking is something that I kind of grew up with. I had um, a grandfather who was very aware of dirty shoes, and basically we weren't allowed out of the house with dirty shoes. Um, and I had a father who was in the Navy, and he taught me to spit shine. So taking care of boots and shoes has been something I've done since I was a teenager. And then when I found leather and kink, it became something that I do as a service and something that I've spent quite a lot of time getting the skills and the knowledge to do properly. So what is bootblacking? Um, Bootblacking it's a service that's given to the community. There's a difference in the USA to the UK and the rest of Europe. And the difference is that in the USA, they have a lot of bootblacks. They have a lot of events where bootblacks are an integral part of the event. There is a bootblack stand at the events and community bootblacks who serve the community by being at that event, by blacking people's boots, and also by looking after their leathers. The leather community itself and the people who wear leather is bigger in the USA than it is here. So they have obviously a lot more people to support that. But bootblacking actually started in the UK and France. It was actually people who cleaned shoes on the streets and the shoe shine people who started the culture of bootblacking. And it was then taken when people emigrated to America. It was taken over to the USA and started off in barbershops over there. And then it became a part of the kink community because there's a large selection of the kink community that have boot fetishes. So it became a way of caring for the boots. It's also a service that you give to your dominant. So I would polish my master's boots on his feet and take care of his leathers, etc. And that is something that can be done in a very service-orientated way from a submissive to a dominant. So I'm going to talk about what bootblacking means to the kink community. And if you think about this as a global thing rather than a UK thing, because currently we don't have a huge community of bootblacking in the UK. I'm hoping to change that though. So bootblacking, it represents the service heart of the leather and fetish community. By its very nature, it's intimate because we choose our boots as part of our leather image and our identity, and we walk our kink and fetish leather path in them. And our leather is like our armor, our second skin. And when those boots are polished on your feet, it's an act of service. It's care for the boots, and it's care for the person wearing those boots. So bootblacks provide a service which improves your image and how you project yourself in your leather and fetish gear. But for bootblacks and for boot fetishists, it's more than that. So feet are one of the most personal parts of the body, and having your boots blacked on your feet can be an intensely intimate experience. We aren't just cleaning your footwear. we see and care for the whole person. And sometimes it can be an erotic exchange, sometimes an intimate sharing, sometimes it's purely a service, and other times it's an energy and a connection, an exchange of energy. Erotic bootblacking done on the feet, it can be anything from the subtle control of DS service, so feeling the pressure of your dominant's foot on your leg or in your hand, pushing down to exert that dominance, the eye contact you maintain and the wordless communication, pleading with your eyes, all of those can reinforce the DS. Or it can progress to a full-blown bootlicking and boot fucking scene. But if you're going to do that, then you need to look at product and what you're using, because some of these things can be a bit toxic. So the more natural, the better. And you need to take allergies into consideration. A lot of bootblacking product contains nut oils, for example, or lanolin or soy oils. And if you're at all sensitive to any of those things, you need to be aware of what's actually on the boots that you're licking. So somebody sits in the bootblack chair to get quality service and attention given to their boots. Often those boots cost a lot of money, and there's something of value that deserves to be cared for and represents who you are in your fetish and leather world. Sometimes those boots are more than just a fashion accessory or a projection of our leather selves. Sometimes they're worn most days and they're old friends. Whether they're valuable in financial terms or in memories and years, they deserve the care that we give them. So bootblacks, when you sit in their chair, you talk and people give you their stories. They give you what those boots mean to them, what their memories with those boots are, why they bought them, what they represent to them as part of their kink identity. So when I came back from bootblacking at Darklands, the best memories I had were of the people and the stories they told me of where their boots had taken them. So there was, for example, the guy who had climbed all the mountains in Iceland in his combat boots, and they were worn and battered, and he loved every nick and scratch and scar on them because they all represented a memory to him. To the guys whose knee-high Wesco boots were part of their leather identities, the people who'd had their boots for years and yet had never had them bootblacked, never had them cared for, and those who had service submissives who wanted them to learn bootblacking so that they could look after their leathers for them. So whatever your relationship is with your boots, the bootblacks hear your boot stories, where they've taken you, what they mean to you, and how they've carried you on good days and bad. So we're going to talk a little bit now about product and what I use to maintain a good shine on people's boots or to look after those boots. So the first things that we're going to look at is, I'm just going to tip that down a little bit more. First thing we're going to look at is the basic tools that we use. So this is a horsehair brush. It's quite soft bristles. You can get softer ones. You can get pig bristle brushes and goat hair brushes, which are softer again. But a good quality horsehair brush is a good thing to have in your kit. This dauber is also horsehair. I use that to put on saddle soap or any kind of cleaning soap. So that sort of thing. Yeah. I also use, quite often I use this one as well because it gets into the nooks and crannies better as well. It's a small horsehair brush again. This doesn't get polish put on it. This is used to buff the polish when it's on the boot and to buff up a shine. So you might want to wash them occasionally because you will get a build-up of grease and oil and wax on them. And you want to keep them as clean as possible. Otherwise, they're not going to give you a very good shine. This is it's a nylon bristle brush with, I think you can see in there, it's got metal bristles in the middle, and I use that for cleaning the welts. So this bit here, you want to clean it in all of the nooks and crannies, underneath, everywhere. One of those brushes, much harder than the horsehair brushes, will get into the cracks and will give you some good cleaning. So other things I have in my kit, also for cleaning into cracks, I have a very battered looking toothbrush. It's a hard toothbrush, and again, it does a similar job, but in smaller scale. And another thing I have in my kit is this, a teaspoon. We'll come on to that later. I do a very interesting thing with a teaspoon. So the first thing that we do with a pair of boots, I'm going to use a different pair of boots. But these boots, as you can see, they do have a nice shine on them, but they're also a bit dusty, and they've had some liquid or something tipped onto them, you can see there. So I'm going to clean one of these boots down and show you what I do to actually build up a shine again on those boots. So I'm going to use, give me 1 second, some water, and I'm going to use saddle soap. I just pour a little into, some people have a bowl in their boot black kit. I just use the tin lid of my saddle soap. And you want to get a fair amount on the brush and just brush it down. Now, these boots don't have a removable harness on them. They're a low-rise harness boot, but it's a fixed harness, so it doesn't come off. So you just want to make sure that you don't keep any product or water underneath that harness, because it will degrade the leather if you leave it there. So just a good clean down. If you were doing these properly from beginning to end, you'd probably clean all over them. So here as well, on the backs. And sometimes, if these boots especially have got a very hard wax polish build up on them, so it's actually going to take quite a lot to get all of that polish off. But I don't particularly want to take all of the polish off, because I'm just showing you what I'm doing here, and they've actually got a really decent condition under them, and they're in very good nick. But if these boots needed a deep condition, you'd actually want to strip off every bit of wax polish that's on them. And the reason for that is because if you've got a layer of wax polish on there, you cannot get your boots conditioned well, because the conditioner needs to sit in the bare leather rather than on top of the wax. So this is a saddle soap. You can get lots of saddle soaps. Find them on Amazon. The other thing I use, I have used saddle soap for this, but you can see the polish coming off there. And you can see that the shine is a lot less. It's quite dull now in places. I'm just going to do a little bit more on that front. Yeah, you can buy on Amazon or your local cobblers. The other thing that is sometimes better to use is glycerin soap. So if you go into Amazon, you can have a look at something called Melt and Pour, which is a a plain glycerin soap which is used in soap making. So it's unscented, it's got no additives at all, it is just pure glycerin. And that makes a really good, gentle cleaner for leather. It's actually my preference. The only reason I'm using saddle soap is because I know that the polish I used on these boots last is really, really hard, and it creates a really hard shell, and it doesn't come off with glycerin soap. So that's just about knowing the product. Saddle soap is a lot harsher than using glycerin. If I wanted to strip these down completely, I would use an ethyl alcohol in a dilute solution. So first of all, in a sort of 30-70 solution, so about 30% alcohol. If it wasn't coming off, I would increase it from there up to 50-50, and then maybe 70-30. I wouldn't use the alcohol neat. It has a very drying effect on leather, but it will absolutely strip the leather back to pure raw leather. So you've got no product on there whatsoever. So after you've cleaned your boots, whichever way you're going to clean them, so whether you're going to give them a gentle stripping with the glycerin soap, something a little bit more harsher, which is the saddle soap or ethyl alcohol, or even if you had really stubborn coatings on the boots which you couldn't get off, you could use acetone. But again, the acetone is like the ethyl alcohol, it's very drying on the boots, so you really want to be careful that you get all of that off afterwards. If I was using acetone or ethyl alcohol, I would actually clean the boots down with water, just water afterwards, to get as much residue off as I could, and then let them dry. You can't do that if you're on a bootblack stand, because you just don't have the time or the resources to do it. So that's the sort of job that you do at home for somebody's boots. So now that I've taken the top layers of polish off them, what I would do next is look at conditioning them. I've got a few favourite conditioners, and everyone has their favourite conditioner. But you've got different types of conditioner as well. You've got this sort of thing, which is a leather gel. It's a cream. It's also quite runny, and it melts very quickly. There's a lot of coconut oil in it, so it soaks in very easily into the leather, and it has that sort of consistency of melting coconut oil. Then there's this one, which is, again, it's coconut oil based, but it also has in it carnauba oil, which is a little bit harder than the coconut oil, and it has it is all natural, so it has beeswax in it and jojoba oil, and it's very good for if you're going to lick the boots or do other intimate things with the boots, because it's very natural. That it comes out like coconut oil, it melts on your fingers with the heat of your hands. So it soaks in really well. There are other brands which you can get. I like this brand. This is Wren's. Wren's is an English company, and they've been around since 1889. And they've been making boot care products since then, and a lot of them still to the same recipes. This is a leather cream. Again, it is very natural in the ingredients, and it sinks in very easily into the leather. You can see it's very runny, and it looks and feels like a skin conditioner, to be honest. This is an American product. The Americans they have a number of brands which are very very well known. Angelus is one of them, and again, it's a very similar product to the Wren's. You can buy all of these things on eBay or online or in your local cobblers. If you happen to have a traditional cobbler near you, you'll find a lot of these products there. So those are the sort of cream ones you can get. This is another Wren's product. This is actually one of my favourite products. It's a dub-in, so it's very grease-based, and I can't open it here. I think I'll put that on rather hard. Hang on. Can't actually open my favourite tin of dub-in. Okay, I'm going to move back to them. So this is Hubert's. Hubert's shoe grease is a very well-known American product. It's made from pine tar and various other greases. It is very greasy. It gives really good waterproofing, as you can see. It's like a dub-in. It's darker though, the pine tar, and it makes it darker. It's one of the reasons I prefer the Wren's, because I really don't like the smell of it. A lot of people love the smell of it, but I don't particularly. I do love the smell of Wren's. It smells like something that you would put on yourself in the shower. It's got essential oils in it, and it's there you go. It's a bit lighter than the Hubert's, and it smells absolutely delicious. It's very grease-based, and it creates a good waterproofing on your boots. There's one thing to be careful of, though, is that when you're wanting to create a high shine on boots, so if you've got hard leather boots like this, and you want to make them really nice and shiny, you're going to struggle to do that if you've used any of the grease-based conditioners first. If you want to create a high shine on boots straight after conditioning them, you're better off using one of the gels like the Colonel, or something like the Wren's cream, because they sink in really easily and they don't leave much residue on the boots. So I'm going to use the Colonel just because it's actually my favourite conditioner. So you want to use your fingers, and you want to rub it in. If you can imagine doing this on somebody's feet, especially if they've got long boots that go up their calves or even up their thighs, you imagine how erotic it can be to have somebody massaging your legs and your feet through the leather of your boots as they're rubbing all of that conditioner into your boots. And also, you're kneeling at somebody's feet or sitting at somebody's feet, cleaning their boots, and maybe they've got a stand, in which case your foot is up on a stand, but maybe your boot is on their leg and you're just pressing down on their thigh with your leg, with your foot. It can create a really intense, gentle, erotic scene. And bootblacking is a scene for an awful lot of us anyway. You will get some technical bootblacks who are very much into the skill. You'll get some who are not submissive in the bootblack chair. And you'll get some who are very submissive and who will give you an erotic bootblack scene. But bear in mind that bootblacks, when they're performing for the community, when they're giving that community service, they might be owned. They might be submissives who are owned. They might be dominants. I'm a bootblack, but I'm only submissive to the head of our leather family, DK. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily want to give a submissive scene to anybody in my chair. I might give them very much an intense energy connection and some real service, but service doesn't necessarily have to be submissive. So there you can see those boots have got conditioner on them now. And we're going to start to layer up some polish. I've just wiped off any residue that might be there because you don't want to keep residue on the boot because it can interfere with how you get your high shine. So for creating shine on the boots, you just put some of these conditioners away. There are a number of polishes you can get. The basic thing that you need is something that most people will be familiar with, is the tin of kiwi. This one happens to be a parade gloss. A word of warning that parade gloss, although it's one of my favorite polishes, isn't something that a lot of people like because it contains silicone. The standard kiwi polish doesn't. The standard kiwi polish is a lot softer. It's a very soft wax polish, and it doesn't contain any silicone at all. The parade gloss is harder. It gives a much better shine, but it does contain silicone, and that's something to be aware of because if you get silicone in the leather of your boots, over time it can degrade. If I use parade gloss, I tend to use it as a last coat. So I'll put 5 or 6 coats of polish on the boot first before I go anywhere near it with the parade gloss. So you're not, that leather isn't absorbing the silicone into the leather. So in this country, you're probably the most common polish that you'll find will be kiwi. There are other ones that you can get online. Kiwi is a very basic polish, in my opinion. It's not great. It's a soft wax polish and it doesn't create great high shines. You can get one. You can get a good high shine with it, but it takes a lot of time and effort. So there are other ones that you can use. This brand, Saphir, is a European brand. I think it's French. It's either French or Belgian or something like that. But it is French, sorry. It's a lovely polish. It creates a really good high shine. They do a number of different types of polish. This is their sort of basic leather shine polish. They also do cream, a cream polish. Cream polish is a lot softer. It is like a cream. It's like a conditioner that has pigment in it. You can get a good soft shine with that. It will never be a hard mirror shine. You wouldn't use it on these. You would use it on boots that are soft leather, which you wouldn't be able to get a high shine on anyway. So anything that's a soft leather boot or the calves of soft leather boots, that sort of thing, you would, on the shaft, you would use a soft cream polish. Saphir also make this, which is mirror gloss. Mirror gloss is probably the hardest wax polish that I've found. It doesn't, it's not something that you would use as a base coat because you actually want a softer polish on the base coat. It's something you would use as a top coat to create, and it's actually what created the shine on these boots, is the Saphir mirror gloss here. So 2 American ones that you have now, Angelus. Angelus, again, they make a really good wax polish. I carry 2 colours. I carry the black and the cordovan, which is a deep burgundy colour. It's quite nice sometimes to use polishes in layers. So I put layers of the cordovan polish on and then top it with the black coat and then top it again with the cordovan coat. And that would actually give it a black that has a real sort of burnish of reddish tinge burnish to it. I also do the same thing with the blue wax as well sometimes. So this is the Lincoln polish. It's a bit harder than the Angelus. And again, I carry that in cordovan and blue and black. I quite like using the blue as a sort of burnishing colour to go on top of the black. This is one that I've recently found. It's another French product called Baran. This costs about £27 for a tin if you find it on Amazon. The same as the Saphir. The Saphir costs, I think it cost me £32 for that tin on eBay. So this can get expensive, it doesn't have to. The Baran, I didn't buy this one on Amazon. I looked at the price of it on Amazon and went, oh my God, £27 for a tin? I'm not paying that. But I'd heard good things about it from other bootblacks, so I wanted to try it. And a friend of mine was in France and picked some up for me at about £2.60 a tin in the local supermarket. So, you know, there are ways and means of getting your products cheaper than you can sometimes get them online. I love the smell of this one, actually. It has a real marzipan almond smell to it. Yeah. So I'm going to use the Saphir to start with, and I'm going to just start building up the layers of polish on this. A little bit on your fingers. You don't have to use your fingers. I like using my fingers to put that first layer on. And that first layer, because you've stripped it all off, is going to be it'll soak quite far into the leather. You'll end up putting quite a bit on. You don't want to build it up in thick layers, but you do want to make sure that everywhere that you've washed and cleaned and conditioned gets a layer of polish on it. This first layer I usually do put on with my hands. Don't have to. Some people actually don't like getting the product on their hands. I find it very intimate to use my hands. Some people bootblack with a pair of latex gloves because latex gloves protect your fingers, especially if you're a femme bootblack. If you're feminine and you've got nice long painted nails, A, you don't want your nails to scratch the boots, but B, you don't really want all that polish and product under your fingernails. So latex gloves, mine happen to be black, but yours could be any color. Latex gloves are a good addition to your bootblack kit, if that's the case. So there are other things, again, that you can use to put the polish on. One of the most common things is to use soft cotton t-shirts, old t-shirts that you're throwing out. Cut them into strips, cut long strips about that thick, that wide, from the bottom of the t-shirt, and use them in your bootblack kit. I actually don't have any here at the moment because they're all in the wash. The other thing that you can get are polishing cloths like this again, these came from Amazon. You can find them as polishing cloths. You wrap them around your finger like that, and you use them to put the polish on. This is actually how I use my, I put the polish on in layers, is actually using a cloth. Or the other thing you can use if you don't have a cloth is makeup pads. Cotton makeup pads of the type that have, they're polished, so they don't release a lot of lint off them. You don't get fibers coming off them very much. Those, wet them down with a little spray. Put your polish on and start to polish. And you want to build up the layers of polish very slowly. Using a cloth, once you've put that first layer on, using a cloth is important because it will actually move the polish around. And you want to use either a cloth or a cotton pad. I have actually polished boots with nothing but a tin of polish and cotton pads and a water spray. and you can get a really good high shine doing that too. There are things to be careful of when you do that, like making sure that you even out all the polish layers with a cotton pad, because you'd normally use your buffing brush to do that. But yes, you can actually polish somebody's boots from start to finish with nothing but cotton wool pads and a tin of polish and a little bit of water. I like to use my cloth. The water helps to create some movement with the polish. You want as frictionless a polish as you can get. You want to move the polish around on the boot. So you're putting it on, but you're also taking it off and moving it to another place on the boot at the same time. You can see this isn't polishing up because the leather is still quite, it's thirsty, it's taking in an awful lot of the product. And you've got conditioner on there, which is going to stop you from getting a high shine straight away. So it takes patience. You need quite a lot of patience in order to, a little bit more polish, a little bit more water. At this point, this is actually where spit shining came in, because people would use saliva instead of water on the boots at the time. And if you're erotically boot blacking somebody's boots, you can use saliva by licking the boots at this point. Personally, I tend to reserve erotic boot blacking for my master's boots. It's not something I would give to anybody. Some boot blacks, it's their kink and it's what they do. They would do in the boot black stand, and they are erotic boot blacks. That's how they class themselves. So this takes a little bit of time to build up the layers. Probably more time than we've got on this video right now, actually. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap to a slightly harder polish. When you put polish on boots, you want to start with a soft wax polish and then build up the layers. You start with a hard wax on the boot and it's more likely to crack. If you put a soft wax underneath it, you're likely to get a much more flexible coating on the boot. So I'm actually going to move to the Lincoln polish. It's a harder wax than the sapphire. And I can feel the difference already. It drags on the boot. So that indicates to me I need more water, because you want the cloth to glide over the boot and over the polish. So if you feel your cloth or your cotton pad dragging on the boot, you want to build it up with a little bit more water and create less friction. You can see the shine is beginning to come back on these. And then when you start building up the layers, I'm going to go back to the buffing brush, because what you don't want is you don't want a build-up of polish in the cracks where the boot flexes and bends. You can keep the hard polish to the toe where it doesn't bend. You don't want to keep a residue of polish in the gap, in the crack there. So you would use the buffing brush to brush it out. and it also creates a layer of, it sort of hardens the polish up. So my go-to for building up the shine on these particular boots is to start with a soft wax like the Sapphire, move to the Lincoln and put another couple of layers on that. And then my final polish that I would go to for these would be the Sapphire, because it creates a really hard top coat. These are not going to come back to a high shine because I don't have time in this class, but again, put your polish on. You want to let the polish, if it's a hard polish, stay only on the areas of the boots that don't flex. So for me, that would be the toe cap, and it would be the heel. Never forget the heel. Having a really nice shine on the back heel of a pair of boots looks great. So you can see the shine's beginning to come back here. I'm not going to have time to finish these, but I'll show you this pair, this other one of the pair. Just wiping the, you can see the shine on those boots. That went through the same process as that one, only with about 6 more layers of polish on it, and finishing off with the Sapphire Mirror Gloss on top. So it is possible to get a really great mirror shine on them with just a little bit more time and care. So I'm going to leave those and put those aside for now, because I want to talk about different types of boots, leather. When we were talking about conditioners, I talked about grease polishes. These are the sort of boots you want to use a grease polish for. These are a Doc Martin oil tan boot. Oil tan leather is, it's a tanning process that involves a lot of grease and oil in the tanning process. You'll never get rid of the oil out of those boots. They will never get high shine because it's not that kind of leather. They have a shine, but it's actually due to the conditioner that's used on them. So these boots, I would want to use my favourite Ren's Dubbin on. You want to waterproof them. You want to take the laces out so that you can condition all of them. I have actually previously washed these boots. You can see that they're really clean. I have washed them and soaked them. So I'm not going to do that now because I don't have time to go through the whole process with you. But once you've washed and your leather is clean, you want to get into every crack. So you want to get into the welt here, into the tongue, and you want to get some of that product on your fingers and just rub it into the boot. Take care if you have coloured stitching not to get product on the stitching. If you do, you can wipe it off with a toothbrush and a little bit of fairy liquid or washing liquid, washing up liquid. And that takes the colour off really well, takes the product off the laces really well. If you have, I have got another pair of Doc Martens which are about 10 years old, and the yellow stitching, even though it's been washed lots of times, is getting a little bit discoloured now. You can get these things which are called China markers. a packet of them in all different sorts of colours, because different boots have different coloured stitching on them. And you can use these wax crayon markers to colour up your stitching very carefully. And it just keeps your stitching nice and fresh looking. So an oil tan boot. A lot of people say, how do you tell the difference between an oil tan boot and a hard shine boot? It's the type of leather. Oil tan leather, it kind of has that sort of squeakiness to it when you rub your finger over it. It's matte. It's soft usually. Sometimes it's thicker than this. I've got another pair of oil tans which are much, much thicker leather than this. It flexes a lot more than hard shine leather does. So if in doubt, if the leather is really soft and it's matte and it doesn't create a shine, doesn't take a shine to it, you want to treat it like an oil tan boot. So that's the basic differences between oil tans and high shines. And they take very little to care for them, really. A little bit of saddle soap for cleaning them, or a little bit of glycerin soap, and something like a dub-in. It's a really reasonable, I think it's about £5 for a tin of that, I'm not sure now. I've had it quite some time, so you don't need much. The tins do last a long time. If I was in America, people would actually probably be asking me for that though, because they love their Hubbards over there. So that's really all I wanted to show you on basic boot care, and it is basic boot care. There is something else I do. I told you I use a spoon in interesting ways. I use it for boots like these. These are my oldest pair of docks. They're over 20 years old. And as you can see here, I don't know if you can see them, they have quite a lot of gouges in them. They're steel toe caps, so the leather has gone down to the metal in places with scratches and gouges. And I use the spoon with my polish. I heat the spoon up, get a little bit of polish on the spoon into the bowl of the spoon, heat it up with a lighter underneath, and then you basically tip the spoon with the molten polish. You don't want to set fire to that polish because it'll burn the oil out. But you just tip it, the liquid polish, onto the boot, and you, using some pressure, you harden it off on the boot with the back of the spoon, filling in all the little cracks. And it's a process we call hot spooning, but I don't see many bootblacks doing it, but it's one that people in my leather family do, and it's one that my dad used to do in the Navy. You can see it actually creates a really hard coat of polish on there. If I was doing that, I would wait for the polish to harden off before I then wet it down with some water and polished it. But that's a really good tip for if you've got scratches and nicks and gouges in your boots, is to use the heat, the hot polish, and to push it into the leather, into the cracks and the gouges with the back of the spoon. So that's why I have a spoon in my kit. The things I wanted to tell you. So my goal as European bootblack was to create a bigger community of bootblacks in the UK, and to get more people talking about bootblacking and interested in bootblacking, and to have bootblacking at kink events across the country. It would be great if some venues could decide that they wanted to put bootblack stands into their venues that were there permanently, that people could go along with their bootblack kits and set up and use. I wanted also to set up a UK bootblack title, because we don't have one. I had to go to Europe to get mine. So It's about the only one there is outside of America, really. There are ones in Canada and in Australia and places like that, but bootblacking really has a much bigger following in America than anywhere else, which I think is a shame because, the Europeans started looking after leather on people's feet in the Shoeshine Boys. And then the Americans took it over, and I think it would be really nice to bring that back into the fetish community in the UK and actually see people bootblacking at events. I have a website. It's called www.getyourhandsdirty.co.uk, exactly as it sounds. There's lots of resources on there. There's a blog, there's some product and some suggestions for product. There's a little bit about who I am and what my vision is for the EU Bootblack title and setting up bootblacking in the UK. And there's also something in there about the next part of my journey, which is to go to Chicago next year in May, if Corona will let us, to compete for the international Mr. Bootblack title. And that obviously needs some fundraising to back that. So you can have a look at my Patreon account there and my fundraising bits, and you can also buy my title pin. In America, every bootblack title holder has a title pin, so whichever state they're from or whatever, and they use them to create fundraising for their journey to continue bootblacking and to continue running for titles. So that's me. I hope you've enjoyed learning about bootblacking a little bit. I kind of want to leave you with the thought that the bootblacks are people who love leather. They also love rubber and latex, and most bootblacks will carry product in their kits as well that will help to shine your latex and your rubber. So that's also something to be aware of. But bootblacks care for the community. There's an awful lot of love in bootblacking. It's a service that is about care for the person and for the items that you're cleaning and looking after. So I hope that you've maybe fallen a little bit in love with the idea of bootblacking and what it can bring into your lives. Thank you. Bye-bye now.